Straightforward TV, going live today with Cassandra Campbell. Going to talk about woman empowerment, self-development. What's up, Marcy? Hello, hello, hello.
Hey.
How you doing?
Right?
Yeah, how you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad, not bad, not bad. Well, might as well get right to it.
Okay, hi, my name's Cassandra. I am a personal development coach, and I work with a range of people, ranging from young people to adults with chronic illness, and just people who have got barriers that are preventing them from living the life that they desire.
Nice. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for participating, first and foremost. Okay. So when you say, first and foremost, where are you located? Where are you from? What area? What areas do you...
I live in London, South London, South West London.
Okay. Just so the people know, they can tell from your accent anyway, but first and foremost, I want to ask you a few questions to get to know about you as a person. And what made you get into woman empowerment? Is it from personal experiences? Is it from just wanting to help people in general? What made you want to get involved in that industry?
Well, it's a mixture of both, really. From a young age, I experienced some traumatic experiences. I had some traumatic experiences, and they really impacted my life as I was growing up, and even when I became a mum. And there were things that I hadn't addressed and dealt with, and the way that which they impacted my life, it just controlled and sort of consumed everything. So it's like this negative stuff was consuming how I felt about myself, you know, the thoughts that I had about myself and the choices that I made. And that went on for a long time, even though I didn't actually realize it at the time as I was growing up.
Right.
But I got to a point where I was just at a really, really low point. And I had a son. And at the time, actually, I was going through some abuse from his dad. And as I said, I got to a really low point, and I had to make a choice about what kind of parent I wanted to be honest.
Okay.
You know, right. And how I could be the best parent that I could be. And in order to do that, I realized over time, and it took me a while, but I had to deal with my stuff. I had to deal with my experiences from the past in order to be able to move forward and actually really be happy. So, yeah, it took a long time. It didn't start until I was about 30.
Okay. Never too late?
It's definitely never too late. Definitely never too late. So I went to counselling to address some of these experiences and some of these traumas. And that was the start of it, really.
Well, I want to commend you on that, because I hear so many stories as far as not wanting to confront their issues. And it takes a lot of strength to even go that route and seek help, because some people want to brush it under the carpet and leave it to the side, but it would just affect you more. And that takes a lot of strength and determination. So I just want to commend you on that, because look where it brought you today. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah.
It probably lifted all kinds of weight off your shoulders, and free-spirited and good mother, and, you know, could have went another way. So I commend you on that. Definitely commend you on that.
Going back to what you were just saying, is that people do tend to just sweep it under the carpet, and they think they're all right. And on the surface, you're all right, and you get on with it, and you go to work, and you pay the bills. But underneath it, you're really not. And my thing is that if you don't address your issues, they're going to come back to bite you on the butt at some point. And for me, I think once you start to take control of it, they can't surprise you when they decide to come back and try and kick you.
Right.
Yeah. Where, you know, and they can come and do that at a time where you're just not prepared for it and turn your life upside down. So my ethos is to deal with it, confront it as hard as it may be, because for me, the things that I was addressing, the hardest things, and I'll just briefly say from a young age, I experienced sexual abuse, and I've also experienced domestic abuse, and along all of that, and from a young age, I was also living with chronic illnesses, and I didn't know what they were.
Right.
So I was living with pain, physical pain every single day, not knowing what was causing it, and then I was also living with the mental and emotional pain that the traumatic experiences, you know. So they kept coming back, even though I thought, you know, I'm dealing with life, I'm getting on, but they kept coming back in some way, shape or form. And then it would knock me, and then it was harder to manage. So when I did finally take the step to address it, as I said, hardest thing I've ever done. The man that abused me, I actually took him to court 25 years later and won.
Congratulations.
That was definitely the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life, and I almost backed out of it. But from taking those steps, I'm telling you, it's the best thing I could ever have done. You know, it just opened up my world in a different way, you know, and by going to counselling, there was a lot of things that I blamed myself for. Yeah, I just was really down on myself, basically. My self-worth was low, you know, I didn't have much self-love, etc., etc. And going to counselling just started that process for me to actually realise, well, actually, it's not your fault that certain things happen to you, you know, and I was able to let go of some of the negative feelings and thoughts that I had about myself. And that process, and then I continued and did some more self-development work, and I actually went and studied counselling, which gave me an even deeper understanding of myself and also of how other people work, how their minds work, and how traumatic experiences, and not always traumatic, just experiences from childhood going on can affect their life's journey, basically. So that was a massive painful step for me, but definitely
worth it.
Most definitely.
Very admirable, very, very admirable. What advice would you give women that, you know, are going through similar things, but they're unable to confront because they don't want to dig up certain memories or certain, you know, it might affect them emotionally. And some women don't have the tools. See, you went to counseling, and some women don't either want to go to counseling or they don't believe in counseling. So what advice do you give? Because obviously you've experienced the counseling side of things. So as far as counseling goes, because I've heard a lot of women that don't like counseling, and they feel it's like, you know, someone else telling them that don't even know them, but that's not counseling. That's someone to open up to and help you and give you the tools you need to confront the issues you're going through. So what advice would you give to the women that, you know, don't want to go down that road?
I didn't want to go to counselling either, to be honest, and I put it off for ages.
Right.
But as I said, I got to sort of like rock bottom, so I had to make a decision. But I met 2 counsellors. I went to 2 initial consultations before I found a counsellor that felt right for me.
Right.
And that is really, really important, you know, because one, as well as them having the right qualifications, you've got to have a connection.
Right.
And if you don't feel a connection, personally, I don't think that the sessions are necessarily going to be productive. So that's the first thing I would say. If you do decide that you want to go down a counselling route, find somebody that you feel that you can connect with. And it's also important for the counsellor that they feel that they can connect with you and to help you, because it's not a one-way relationship. for those who are a little bit adverse to counselling, as I said, it wasn't something that I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
First of all, I look at the reasons why you don't want to do counselling. And a lot of the time, there is that thing, and sometimes a cultural thing of I don't want to talk my business.
Right.
Because that's how you're raised. You don't talk your business, you keep your business inside the home, which I think has affected a lot of people, and a lot of the older generations in a massive, massive way, which then trickles down and impacts on the rest of the family and the rest of the generations.
Exactly.
And I think for a lot of people, it's fear. And I was scared. I was scared about what was going to come out. And when I initially went to counselling, it wasn't about that abuse. It was about abuse from my former partner.
Right.
And it was about learning how to accept the chronic illnesses that I was living with and how they were affecting my life, because it affected me in regards to education, employment, career-wise. It affected a lot of things. So that's what I initially went for. But the counsellor was so good. She knew there was something else going on.
Right.
And that's what I was saying. When you find a good counsellor, it's really worth it. And it can be painful. It can. But to me, you're living in pain anyway.
Yeah.
And you're living in a pain that's, if you don't address it, and counselling isn't for everybody. There may be another avenue for some people. But it's a pain that if you don't address it, it's going to continue. Even though it might feel like it's suppressed and it's not really impacting your life, it's going to continue. And it may then also impact your children. Not intentionally, yeah, but how we feel about ourselves impacts the way that we parent.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I will say yes. It's a lot of the time it is a fear thing, but to me, in regards to addressing fears, I mean, even doing this live video,
everything's a stepping stone. Everything's a stepping stone.
But you've got to do it, and once you do it. And you keep doing things, actually, what you were fearful of, you look back and you think, well, what was I scared of?
Yeah.
What was the fear about? And for me, with the counselling, it wasn't just, go to the counselling sessions and everything was great. It was a process, and I had to do more work on myself. But when I came out the other end...
How long did you go to counselling for in total?
It was just 6 sessions.
I know everybody's different. Some people
Yeah.
could do 6 sessions. Some people need more and more and more. But
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned also she knew there was something else. So did you initially tell her about your ex-partner's abuse?
That was the initial conversation.
Yeah.
That's
but
what I went
she knew
for.
there was something else.
She knew there was something else. I spoke about that. I spoke about being abandoned by my father. I spoke about the abuse from my son's father, but I didn't speak about the childhood.
Gotcha.
But she just knew that she just knew. So she was just that good, She just knew, and she somehow brought it.
Got it out of you.
And she got it out of me, And then from there, it was, it got even more painful. But it led me to the point of feeling strong enough to, one, take him to court. And then continue with my process of addressing, what I needed to address.
But that's a lifelong traumatic experience. And to even confront that, let alone the others, to confront that, I don't know how you did it. And that's coming from a man. A man.
I don't know how I did it.
No, that's strength. That's proper strength right there.
But at the time, you don't necessarily feel strong.
Yeah, I know.
You don't feel like you're strong. But it was to me, I only had 2 choices.
Right.
And it was almost to the point of my choices were life or death. And death doesn't necessarily mean being 6 foot under and part. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just not having a life, just being numb to...
Your insides shattered.
Yeah, So, those were my choices. And definitely having a child, I had to make that decision.
Right. Right.
You know?
Right.
So, yeah.
Wow, that's powerful though. It's powerful, and we haven't even moved on to nothing else yet. But that's powerful. It's just admirable to hear that story because, like I said, a lot of people are stuck and they don't want to go down that road.
Yeah.
And it's just when you hear about it, I've heard stuff. I've never been through nothing like that, but I've heard stuff, and I can't relate because I don't have that experience or that feeling. But just hearing it, it's like you try to put yourself in other person's shoes, and it's like, wow, that's what you can say. I can't elaborate on it or anything. It's just admirable to hear that you confronted it, you overcame it. Obviously, it's an ongoing process, but you're here, you're doing big things, and I just want to congratulate you on your endeavors. So that leads us on to, as far as self-development, personal development, what actually do you do in that department?
Okay, well, if I go back to how I got into doing this kind of work, so after dealing with that stuff, going to counselling, I decided to study counselling. Yeah. And while I was studying counselling, I was informed about an organisation that works with young people doing personal development workshops and behavioural workshops. So these were young people who were either in prison or going to young offenders institute, getting into problems at school, or just really having some challenging experiences. So I did some training with them and volunteered with them for a few years. Did, as well as the behavioural workshops, I also did some one-to-one mentoring.
Okay.
And I just really, really enjoyed just helping these young people to increase their self-awareness and understand why they were making certain decisions that they were making, and helping them to try and change their behaviours.
Right.
And I did that for a while, and I found that I was finding that a lot of the workshops and programs out there were very much after the event. So when they're already in trouble, or when they're already on the verge of being excluded from school, when they're already getting themselves into difficult situations. And I wanted to create something to help them. And I kind of more focused on girls because I'm a girl.
Yeah.
And I wanted to create something that was going to help them to have that self-awareness before they start making
point. Yeah.
Getting into risky situations.
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of us, we think we know ourselves, but we don't really know ourselves.
Right.
Yeah. And especially when you're a teenager, there's just so much going on, and you don't always have the parents and the support and the environment to help you to develop in the way that you need to develop.
Right.
So I actually created a program for girls called Pandora's Box. And Pandora's Box was about, okay, so they say you mustn't open a Pandora's box because, Pandora, and she let out all this evil out and disease out into the world, etc., etc. But my take on it is that if you let all of that negative stuff out and replace it with positive things. So Pandora's Box was about opening the box, seeing what's in there, letting it out, and replacing it with hope, positivity, and all the things that you need to go forward and live a happy, content, fulfilled life.
Makes sense.
So I created that and started delivering that. And then I decided, right, well, I want to start my own youth organisation. So did that back in 2013.
Right. What's your own organisation?
Yeah, it was called Self, and I was running it with my former business partner.
Yeah.
And we did that for about 5 years.
Okay.
And it was going pretty well. We had our challenges. It was very difficult getting funding and things like that. But we worked in schools, and we also worked with boys as well.
Right.
So, created a number of workshops. We worked at young offenders institutes. So we worked with, in the community, at youth clubs, etc., etc. So we worked with quite a diverse range of young people, not just young people who were getting into trouble.
Right.
Um,
So what was it? Young people that had low self-esteem, confidence.
Yeah. It could be in confidence building workshops, Sean.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Yeah. Is it okay for me to mention that you worked with us for a little while?
Of course. Why would I be ashamed of that?
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we did some confidence building workshops with boys, and some one-to-one stuff. So the workshops were depending on what were the needs of the young people.
Right.
So there was a range of workshops, and according to what their needs might have been, that's what we delivered. And we had some really, really good outcomes for those young people and some really good feedback. And I really did enjoy and love doing that. It did become a little bit challenging, especially with the chronic illnesses that I live with, going out and delivering workshops all the time. It's
We're going to get to that. Mm-hmm.
Running the business, working with young people, it can be a bit emotional, can be a little bit stressful, but I just love doing it, to be honest. Right. I really, just seeing, the difficult thing is that you don't always get to see the results and the outcomes, because you might be with them for, a couple of months, and then after that, you're gone.
You're gone, yeah.
And there are some that you can see the process that they're going through, you can see how they're changing their mindset and behavior, and you can see those outcomes, but there are others that they might not start to really process what they've learned for another year, 2 years, 5 years. But for me, even though I didn't always get to see the outcomes, I would just always have to keep in my mind and in my heart that at some point, this stuff's going to sink in for them. And in 5 years' time, they might look back and say, do you know what? That's what Cassandra was talking about.
Yeah.
And I could start, and start actually utilising the tools that they're given in their life. So for me, it's like, if I just have that small impact that even just makes them start to think of doing things differently, or, stepping out of their comfort zone to build their confidence, then I've done my job.
One thing, I remember we spoke about it when we was doing that workshop, and what people fail to realize, right, when you're delivering a workshop and working with anybody, let alone young people, the follow-up is very, very important.
Yeah.
That's the most effective way to really reach out and make a change, is the follow-up, because you're developing, even though it might be a surface relationship, you're still developing some sort of relationship with them where they can trust you and open up and speak. And these are people that probably never spoke to anybody before.
That's right.
So now you moved on to something else or another project, and they're forgotten about.
Yeah.
So to them, it's like, what happened? Like, we was getting somewhere, and now you left me out in the cold.
Yeah.
So
and
the follow-up is important.
Yeah, and that's how I would feel a lot of the time. And it was horrible because we had even certain situations with schools that we wanted to go back and do the follow-up, whether it be 3 months, 6 months, a year down the line. But trying to maintain that communication with a school sometimes was really, really challenging. And I had to really get my head around, I have to sort of learn to separate myself from it and not get too emotionally.
Right?
Yeah, because you're not always going to have the opportunity to do that.
Right.
And it's you can want to do that, but if, whether it's a school or whoever are not reciprocating and giving you the room to do that, it's kind of out of your control, because you can't contact the student or the young person directly.
Right.
Yeah, you can't have their personal details to sort of pick up the phone every now and again and say, oh, hey, how you doing? You can't do that because, confidentiality, data, safeguarding, etc., etc. So you're not free to do that. And that was one of the most, when I first started working with young people, that was one of the most challenging things that I found, is that I wasn't able to follow up to see how they were doing 6 months down the road, a year down the road, a couple of years down the road, I didn't have the freedom to do that, and that was challenging for me.
That's difficult.
Yeah, I had to get my head around that because that's not easy.
Mm.
But on a more positive note, I have seen some of the students that I've worked with in schools that are, not too far, in the area. I've seen them every now and again. I've seen one or two of them, and doing pretty well, and they'll come up to me like, "Oh, miss," So when that's happened, that's been really lovely.
Good. At least you get. I always say this, right? I say this to myself a lot, even doing these lives. If one person sees this and gets something from it, mission accomplished. Same with you. You can't reach out and change everybody's life that you help. But if you change one, your mission is accomplished. Because obviously you want to help everybody, you want to change everybody's life, but it's not going to happen. And that's just the reality of it. You know what I mean? So mission accomplished, like I said. Okay, we're going to move on to your chronic illness. And you never really, I heard you mention it before, but we never got to really speak about it. And I never knew the depth of what you was going through. So what's the name of your chronic illness that you suffer with?
Okay, well, I have two. And one's called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And there are 13 different types of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And the type that I have is called hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Most people have never heard of it, so it's fine if you haven't. And that is mainly a joint, a condition that affects mainly the joints, but that's just one aspect of it. And it's the collagen that is created in the connective tissues is, when it's created, it's distorted, which means it is lax. So, for example, have you heard of hypermobility?
Yeah.
Right. So some people are born hypermobile. And to be hypermobile means that your joints are very flexible. Right. So if you're a gymnast, dancer, contortionist, it can be great. And you can be hypermobile all your life and never have any pain or any issues.
Right.
But then when it becomes the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and there are lots of different names for it, so I'm just going to keep it simple so that people can try and understand. When it becomes the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, that comes with a lot of other associated symptoms and conditions, which you're basically living with daily pain, chronic fatigue. There are lots of symptoms. I can't go into all of them. And I don't have all of the symptoms. And the other one is called fibromyalgia, which is a little bit more commonly heard of, I think.
I heard of that one, yeah.
Yeah. So I started being affected from the age of about 13. And they just kept telling me it was growing pains. I was a very sporty, active child, played football every day, gymnastics, dancing. I was really, really active.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where I was just finding it really challenging to continue doing my sports and all my other activities. And I was just in pain. And they kept saying it was growing pains. And then by the time I got to about 17, it just got worse and really affected my mobility. And I had to start using crutches because sometimes I couldn't walk. And it kind of got progressively worse as I got older. And then I never actually got diagnosed until I was 33, which was 10 years ago. So for all this time, it impacted my education, my career goals. It just impacted really every aspect of my life, and as well because I had no idea what was wrong. So I just kept getting fobbed off by doctors. They didn't know what was wrong, so they just fobbed me off and sort of treat you like you're a bit of a hypochondriac, making it all up. And then it just comes, oh, well, it's just chronic fatigue. I lost jobs because of it. The career aspirations that I had just weren't possible. I wanted to be a flight attendant. I wanted to travel the world. I was studying leisure and tourism. And it was around that age at 17 where I was studying that it really started to impact my mobility. So yeah, I literally just had to get on with my life and learn the best way how to cope, because nobody had diagnosed me. There was no support, there was no information, there was no help. So I just had to figure it out for myself, basically, until I was eventually diagnosed.
What was it, lack of research? What was it, as far as the medical side of things?
What do you mean? Oh, do you say, was it lack of research?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was a case of, yeah, it was lack of research. I think that was a big part of it. But what it is as well is that medical students, GPs, they're taught in a specific way. And what they're taught is, if it looks like that, then that's what it is and it can't be anything else. Or if it looks like that and that's not usual or normal for what they've learned, then, well, we don't know what it is. Do you get what I'm saying? And there wasn't, I guess, the interest from specialists to want to figure out what it was. But I also think that as the years have gone by, just like with most health conditions, you know, science, as the years go by, they do more and more research and it becomes more and more understood.
Right.
You know, and then they become a lot more knowledgeable of it.
Wow. So how do those two affect you physically? What does it actually, does it flare up? What does it do when it flares up? Or
okay, well, every day there's pain. There's not a day that there's not pain in my body. That just doesn't exist. However, it's the daily pain is my normal. So I'm used to it. So whereas you might see me and have no idea, like right now my back's really hurting me and you would never know. But I'm used to that level of pain. And then a flare-up could consist of, and it's different for everybody, my main pain is my lower back, but I also have pain in my neck and shoulders. There are days when I can't move my neck, or it's just very, very painful to move my neck. You know, it affects all of my joints in some way, shape or form. And the biggest thing that people tend to have to deal with is dislocations or subluxations. So some people, I mean, I'm very